Hey guys, again, how are you? Today I'm gonna be showing you guys how to build a little Bohemian Getaway out of a old lantern, a broken lantern that I found from the Goodwill outlet. Anyway, this is a chandelier piece. It's so cool. I think it's just the bottom part of a clock, but it's perfectly balanced and it won't be that way by the time we're done with this video. Here's a couple of dingles that we may or may not use. Get those out of there.
Fear not, my friends. This will be
Shameless promotion.
performance.
Man, I'm so strong. Alright, so this is going to be our floorboard. This is going to be just like our platform that we start with. And I'm going to have to tear off this part so that it'll actually stick to the metal. This is brought to you by recycling. Those of you who can afford to do so probably should. Although none of this is probably going to go with the recycling, so you guys do whatever you want to do. I'm going to make some floor planks out of some broad popsicle sticks. So just cut them all to be, I don't know, wonky intentionally, because you're going to want those little splits in your boards. I'm going to cut these just rando style. There's going to be loosely 3 different kind of lengths. There's going to be long, medium, and small. And then I'm going to lay them out however I think will work. I mean, and they're all going to be a little bit... They're not straight planks for a reason, and you guys will see why. Wedge that in there. Perfect.
Now close your eyes and concentrate.
Now, take your crappy old box cutter. This box cutter is the worst. It's probably because I don't take good care of the tools that I have, but the blade doesn't lock in place, so you guys just get to go ahead and watch me drive that struggle bus all the way through this platform. Also, it's really important to have a nice, new, clean razor blade if you're going to be cutting foam board. I never remember that whenever I start on a project, and I always think, oh, this is good enough. And it never is. It always just sucks, and it's just a struggle. So do yourself a favor and get yourself a brand new blade. It's totally worth it, and it'll save you minutes of agony. Yeah, and editing. Still not straight, but good enough. So now we're going to do a little bit of basin case, as my husband would call it. It just kind of gives that floor that nice finished look, which I'm not really too concerned about because I want this to feel like it's kind of, you know, an abandoned ruin somewhere where you would go and have your next great writer's block.
Just gaze into the crystal ball.
Cut the angles on those to fit. And fit they do. Oh. Sometimes brute force works, and sometimes it just doesn't. Sometimes it's just worth it to reconsider. So instead of using these, I'm just going to use these little skinnies. It shouldn't matter. It's just to brace it in there with. Okay, so next we're going to use a stain, and we're going to get a different color on these popsicle sticks because right now they look like birch wood or something. I don't know. You guys know what? They use popsicle sticks. Yeah, I thought that I could use that awesome little cup as a container for my wash. It didn't happen, so now I've got a nice puddle that I can draw from. And this is the reason that we don't have nice things. It is totally my fault, and I'm sorry. Anyway, give the whole thing a thorough wash. Make sure that it's all basically the same color, but you want to be heavy-handed in some spots and less so in others. I'm going to go in with some black and start filling in some of those little cracks. And while it's wet, you want to do this for sure. Like, you want to wet blend it together, otherwise it's going to look terrible. It looks like it's going to look terrible, but it'll work out, I promise. This is just to give it a little bit of character. It also always dries much, much lighter than you think it's going to. Hooray! Alright, now we're going to add a little bit of moss to the floorboards. Like this place has been forgotten about for a long time, and nature's taking it back over. Want to get those corners first because this flocking kind of hides all your sins. And then when you have your ugliest joints covered, then just start putting it wherever you think that it would want to come through. And you want to add a couple of different colors, that way you don't get bored looking at it. This is me just trying out different glues for no reason. I'll be switching back to hot glue probably in a minute. Really want to give that floorboard a nice moss wedgie. Really jam it in there between those cracks. It'll just get it to stay in there, especially since this is such loose stuff. It'll just kind of flake off after a while once it starts to lose its moisture over time. So, I mean, and really what you want to do is probably seal it in too after the fact so it doesn't go anywhere. Especially if you've got kids. It is hard for kids to resist little miniatures, and yeah, they just can't help themselves, and who would ever want them to try? So right now, what I'm doing is I'm going to add some extra floral. This is me trying to find a place for that roller to work. It still doesn't work for anything. I hate that thing, but one day it'll find its purpose. So instead, I just took one of my business cards and I pushed out the remaining stuff and I wiped away all of the extra glue with my sleeve. I just used tacky glue for this. It stayed just fine. I think pretty much any white glue on glass should do just the trick as long as you don't plan on submerging it in water later. I got this old botanicals calendar that I'm just gonna painstakingly cut out these beautiful floral bunches, and then I'm going to favor the corners that have the highest bits on there so that you kind of have this, I don't know, kind of like a U shape. You know, when you are wallpapering stuff like this, like really thick paper, it's almost impossible to cut with scissors. It's definitely impossible to cut with a dull razor blade. And that's the kind of thing that can just stop you dead in your tracks for a minute if you've just got, you know, you just don't really know what to do. So I just decided that I was going to rip it on off because it was making me crazy, just flapping in the wind like that. I could have waited for it to dry, but I don't have that kind of patience. And I don't think you would have liked to see it there either. Alright, on to the chandelier. So now what you want to do is you want to get your random box full of broken chandelier pieces. There we go. I got a Christmas ornament floating around in there just for this purpose. We're going to take the crystal off and attach it here. Beautiful.
Fear not, my friends. This will be my greatest performance.
So one of the reasons that I want to use this is not only because it's pretty, but it's also going to stop from putting too much stress on the actual wire. It's going to be bearing the entirety of the weight of the chandelier, so you want something else besides just this delicate LED strip to act as your, your beast of burden. So there it is, all wrapped up and turned on. Then I put that thing on and realized that it really is pretty, but it's basically just a shield that blocks all of the rest of the detail in the project that I've been working on. So I went ahead and took it off later. You won't see it in the final results, but it's magnetic, and that's going to solve a lot of problems for us. So right now, I'm just hollowing out a little piece of the resin part of this rose magnet that I got. It's like, I don't know. Again, it's just a thing that I found at the Goodwill outlet with everything else. But it's a really strong magnet. So I'm going to go ahead and just glue that right there. Wait for it to dry. Perfect. So the reason that it's glued onto two sticks like this is because I had this fun idea. At the very top, you can see that there are lips where all of the metal pieces connect the lantern together. And I thought if I can just glue some rafter pieces up there, then I can put some plant stuff hanging down and like maybe some, I don't know. I thought it would be an opportunity, to make it look like a old dilapidated building. And it would have been great. And I sunk so much time trying to get these rafters in. And then I didn't get it on video, my disappointment, which is probably better. But I realized that my chandelier is like 5 inches long, and it almost draped the floor when I hung it because of those rafters. So, yeah, this was just a lot of energy all for naught. I'm not really sure why I'm showing all of this to you now. Anyway, so this is me struggling to get all my floorboards in. So the point is measure twice, cut once, or measure once. I did not do that before. I'm just reinforcing where I twist tied them with a wire, so alright, and it works. Alright, we're gonna actually commit to the floorboard now that we've got our wallpaper in place. Here's a huge chair. So I went ahead and I distressed this chair the way that I thought that I should. So, after all that distressing, I put the chair in, and I hated it. So, originally I was like, okay, this is just gonna be what it is, because I found all this stuff at the Goodwill outlet together on the same day. I thought it would be a quirky video, but I didn't even record myself doing that. And then I put the chair in, and I hated it, because it's like, it's just a room with a chair and a chandelier and a cat. So I was like, maybe we should make it a little smaller. I tried the piano, still not small enough. Tried the writing desk, perfect. Here we are. So, but a writing desk is going to require at least some kind of seating. this is my bag of miniature stuff. One day, I hope to make a miniature with all of this stuff. There's a bag of toilets. There's a nightmare bag of clowns I'm gonna do something cool with. Exotic animals. And chairs! Finally. So, I only had 2 candidates that were small enough for this project. And we decided to go with the purple one, I think. Whoops. Sorry, that was a spoiler. Purple it is. Anyways, so I don't want the color, and it looks too plastic, so I'm gonna have to take it down with something. So I grabbed my Dremel, which always works better when it's plugged in. There it is. What a powerhouse. I decided that before I had to switch out the head, I was going to go ahead and take advantage and just cut down these railings that I'm also going to be using for the front entrance. It just kind of closes everything in, and it makes the room look like less of a departure than from the lantern, I guess. I'm going to remove this little hump on the back because these things used to be keychains, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, I just found a bag of them at the Goodwill outlet, and I had to take little rings off. So here, I'm just etching in some extra detail because I feel like it looks too plasticky, which I probably should have just left alone because it's not smooth sailing. And you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't think a diamond bit on plastic is the best way to go. Oof, man, for you ASMR people, I'm sorry about that. Just add a little notch, a couple little notches. So at this point I'm not thrilled with how the chair is looking. I think they need to be more pillowy. Also, there's all this crap in there that like you just can't really get out because the power tool sort of melts the plastic to itself in like whatever position it's laying in. It's a pain to scrape out. For like a 2-inch chair, this is a lot more labor than I had intended to give it. So, but at this point, I mean, it's just too late to go back. So now we're going to take this sander tool and we're going to add a little bit of deep wood grain to the back of this chair to make it look a little less plastic. And if nothing else, just get rid of some of the resin lines or the pour lines, whatever, the casting lines, I guess what they would call. And those little circles. Ugh, awful. So we're just going to go ahead and get frustrated and switch back to the front of the chair. I kind of wanted to give it more of a bevel, so I switched out to a round diamond bit. So the way that I usually end up working is when I get frustrated with one thing, I'll switch over to the other thing that I gave up because I was frustrated with. So this is me toggling between back and forth. So eventually we got everything kind of sanded down. I think this is just me throwing everything in front of the camera in frustration. But now we're on to doing some dry brushing. So this is cast iron, I think, and so I just want to brighten it up a little bit. It's really dark. I also don't want to lose that kind of natural toning, but it's supposed to look like it's wood, and it does not look like it's wood right now. So we're going to do a dry brush, and then I'm going to later counter that dry brush entirely by giving it a wash. But you come up with some kind of texture.
This will be my greatest performance.
It's a little fleshier of a color than I was hoping it would be. Doing the back for no reason. It will never show. But if for no other reason than to highlight where I took off that Made in Hong Kong sticker, I guess that's good. Alright, very dry brushed. Everything's looking nice and flat. Now I got this other little plastic table because since we decided to go down in scale, we can fit a lot more into this little space. So now we're gonna dry brush this guy, give it a little bit of life, and then we'll do a wash too after the fact, which is kind of backwards. Most people would suggest that you do, you know, your wash to fill in your crevices first, and then you do a dry brush afterwards, so that you can really bring out those top layers. But I just do whatever I feel like whenever I want to, I guess. So this is why you'll see a lot of steps happening at the wrong time. And here's that silver fence I was talking to you about. Also, I don't know why, but I guess the mixture of the paint that I used or something, it didn't like it, and it just stayed perma-tacky, which is a bad thing, I think, especially when you're using flocking, because it just, like, sticks to everything. So, we set those down and decided to just deal with them later. I set them down and decided to deal with them later. So now we're going to give a little black wash on this chair. It's funny, I actually gave the same paint treatment to one of my old couches. You can paint your couches. I've done it many times.
But remember,
There we are with that little black wash. And then just to kind of affirm that this is not wood. It's a cushion. Table, same kind of paint treatment.
now close your eyes and concentrate.
There's a little bit of beer because I didn't want to get up and get water. It works just the same, as far as I know. It probably doesn't. It probably changes the pH balance in there or something, but it didn't seem to matter for this project. So when you're painting plastic to look like wood, the most important thing to do is to just maintain one direction that you want to go. And then just add some black while it's wet, and you can get nice little wood grain details. So I decided that I was going to ditch the lid, which is a bummer because the roller desk lid is so romantic, but you have so much real estate underneath it, and I can do so much more without it, and I'm sure that I can figure out something to do with it for the future. I'll probably find some boring desk that I can add it to. So here's a book. Obviously, if you don't care about scale, it's not a big deal, but I do. So, okay, that's better. More manageable. Here's a bottle of Kahlua. Because, you know, party time all the time. So I decided I want to put a little mantle on the back of the desk just to give me a little bit more options of things that I could put back there. Now you want to just kind of give it the same wash treatment as before, only to realize that it doesn't match at all, and then just go ahead and redo everything that you already worked for to match the mantle. So, that's what this process is. Here we go. So I made this bonsai tree, and it's adorable. And I'm going to show you guys an easy way to make bonsai trees, because every time I go to a hobby store and I see them for sale, it just makes me crazy. So yeah, that's a grapevine. And the cool thing about your grapevines is they're pretty stiff. They're pretty good, you know, they don't really move, you know. I mean, they dry well, and they have a lot of rigidity to them. And then you just stick some hot glue on there, and then you just dunk it in. Just whatever you pull out just is what you get. I was going to use that as a plant stand. It didn't work. If you have any posts or if you have any old earrings that just don't function anymore, so this was a post that had lost its stone. So what I did is you just cut it off much smaller. And then you actually turn the post around, and then it makes a cute little miniature candle holder. And you can see I did it with a goblet as well, right there. And then we just threw some papers about. I did end up making a bunch of those little bottles out of beads, which I will show you guys how to do at a future date. I'm sure it's not that hard. You can just look at them and figure out how I did it. This is me just adding flocking to some of the uglier parts on the outside of it so that there's a bit of continuity even on the back end. I think is important, just especially if this is a lantern that will go in somebody's home eventually. I don't know. If it turns to, if you decide to suspend it from its little hook, then it's gonna swivel however it will, and you'll see the back end eventually. So every angle should look nice. So without further ado, here are my glamour shots. If you notice, the table is like slightly off center. Not even slightly, it's glaringly obvious now that I'm looking at it, but it had to be that way. It was the only place I could glue it down that it wasn't gonna tilt, so it was either slightly off centered or tilted. So I chose the latter of two evils. Anyway, here you go. Enjoy these pictures. There's a candle that I also didn't really show you how to make, but it wasn't a big deal. None of this little stuff is a big deal, but one day I'll show you how to make it all, maybe. If you guys enjoyed the music that you heard tonight, this was from Glenn Lumens. He's on Spotify, he's on YouTube, Amazon Prime, all the good things. His link will be in the description box below. If you want to buy this odd thing that I made, I have an Etsy store that will also be in the description box and the link below with a lot of other odd things that I have for sale on that shop. So if nothing else, go check it out. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you soon. Take care.